Welcome to all of you and a heartfelt namaste. I, Anuradha Sharda, would like to thank all of you for watching my videos, writing in your suggestions and your comments. With popular demand, we have James Braha back with us. James, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
James, it's going to be in a few months' time. Again, there's going to be a conglomerate of planets right there in Capricorn. Too many planets. So I know you don't do mundane astrology, but you
I have
do.
nothing to. I have nothing to say about that. Zero.
Okay, so you do a lot of transits, and with your books having a lot of to say in on combination of planets. So what exactly are we going to learn from you today on the various
Well,
planets?
I have been. You know, I'm sure the viewers know I have been revising my original book from 35 years ago.
Right.
I'm finally done with that, and it'll be out soon, a couple weeks. But I got to the end of the book, and there was a final note. This was written 1985. The final note said, I was explaining. The title is Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer. This was
Right.
1985 when I wrote it.
Right.
And I was trying to get Western astrologers to learn Jyotish. That's who the book was for. That's who it was
Right.
for. So at the end of the book, I'm explaining, don't be afraid to enter this new system. If you already know Western astrology, it's very easy to move in. And I went through a whole page of this. 35 years later, I come back and I'm writing the final note. And I have to turn the final note around. This is something, if somebody had told me in 1985, 35 years from now, you're going to be telling the Jyotish students to please look into
Western astrology.
Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Please look into the Hindu system. I would have been shocked. So many Western astrologers took that book. They decided, oh, the Hindu astrology works better. I'll forget about the Western system and I'll just use the Hindu. I'll just use the sidereal zodiac. I said, no, both systems work. When Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008 in the tropical zodiac, the establishment crashed. 12 years later, Pluto hit Capricorn in the sidereal system. The pandemic shut down the world. Both systems work. So this is what I'm explaining now in the end of that book. I'm turning it around. So I'm going to talk about Uranus today, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, probably just Uranus, but something to understand is that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they are not Western. They are not Hindu. They are just planets that were discovered in the last 200 years.
Right.
The more progressive astrologers in India will certainly use Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The more traditional ones will not. Okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I also want to mention something about yagyas and mantras and gemstones before I get into the others. I did a video 3 weeks ago called Upayes. And I talked about mantras and I talked about yagyas and I talked about gemstones. And then after I was done, I started thinking, you know, I'm really getting hit hard with the planets. I had 3 planets hitting my Mercury. Saturn's hitting Mercury. Mars is hitting Mercury. Pluto is hitting. They're all hit. 3 planets. And I entered the Venus Bhukti, which is my weakest Bhukti. So I started having health problems. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get a yagya because I was starting to have pains in my groin. So I get 2 yagyas, 3 days for Mercury, 3 days for Venus, okay? And, you know, when it comes to yagyas, you never know exactly what will happen. You don't know. You don't know if you'll get miracles, if you will not get miracles. So nature will, you know, you may be getting a yagya, like I was getting a yagya specifically for health. But when they are praying for you, the gods, the planets are going to try to fix whatever needs fixing, okay? And so I get these 2 yagyas, and I get through Sunday night when Mars was hitting Mercury exact. I get through it. No kidney stone, no nothing. And then, you know, about 3-4 months ago, we tore apart our kitchen. Before the pandemic, we tore the kitchen apart and started working on it. And then my handyman cannot come back. So we're living with a kitchen that is halfway done. And his problem is he's always in pain. He has physical problems. He's in pain. So I get the yagya. And then I get a call from him. When the yagya was going on, he decided to go out and get a dehumidifier because the doctor had said, go live in Arizona. They've been telling him for 2 years to go live in Arizona. No, I'm not going to do it. But suddenly during the yagya, he gets a dehumidifier. He says, James, I'm coming over to finish your kitchen. My pain is gone. I said, what? He says, my pain, it's gone. I can't believe it. It's a miracle. This, blah, 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 blah. So I start thinking, I wonder if the yagya had something to do with this, right? But So he comes over and he won't stop talking about how great he feels. The pain is gone, et cetera, et cetera. And then he says to me, now he's not spiritual, he's not mystical, but he knows I'm into mystical stuff. And he says to me, he says, I started, what is this miracle? I started wondering, did James do something?
Uh,
And I thought the yagya, but I'm not going to tell him about the yagya. He said it 3 or 4 times. I thought maybe James did something. So finally I told him about the yagya. So he got a benefit, but the benefit for me, the yagya was for me. So now we get to have our kitchen done. So these yagyas, they work in ways that you
can't
will
even
surprise you.
perceive.
They are definitely worth doing. And by the way, I was speaking with someone about the yagyas who is a Sanskrit scholar. He translates Sanskrit. And we were talking, and for yagyas, it's usually interpreted as a sacrifice.
Right.
As a sacrifice. He told me, he said, James, I want to tell you something fascinating. He said, when you translate literally what it is, it's not a sacrifice, it's an exchange, which I found startling. He said, in the text, in the Gita, it says that when you do a yagya and you are praying to the gods, you are praying to the planets, you are bringing the planets into existence. You are bringing the gods, you are giving the gods life. Yes. You are giving them life. And when you give them life, they pay you back with an exchange, which I found fascinating.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So this is also one of the reasons why we are asked, the English say their grace. We also do our prayers before eating. So this is the reason when you offer them, and traditionally the Pandits, the Brahmins would take out food and keep it outside their plate as a sacrificial need for the, for their elders and for the Devatas. So when you pay them, that is exactly the reason why we do the Shraddh Paksh and everything. But then it's become a tradition nowadays in India to defy all these things.
Yeah. So I also want to mention back a little bit about that final note in the book.
Right.
I try to explain, and I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. These things need to be, it's come to me that this is an oral tradition. You don't get it by reading. So I'm going to say this again. In that final note, I mention that people that are studying Jyotish are extremely reticent to go into the Hindu system and into the Western system. And the main reason they give, I haven't mastered this system. I haven't mastered this system. You are never going to master Jyotish. You're going to be a student forever. I'm still a student. I'm still learning. So the idea that you have to master one system before looking into the other is just, it's not logical. Secondly, people think, well, I'm not getting the best results in the system I'm using, so I'll go deeper. But when they go deeper into these exotic, I'll go into the Karakamsha, I'll go into Aruda Lagna, I'll go into all these different things. The further deeper you go, the more random the results. In other words, when you are studying Jyotish, the basics, the planets, the houses, the aspects, the exaltations, that's where you get the most information that is consistent if you know what you're doing.
Exactly.
When you go into the deeper system, into the yogas, it becomes more random. The yogas, in my belief, it works better for people that are highly psychic, because the yogas, they work randomly. So when the astrologer gets a psychic intuition, oh, this yoga is it's working now. That's how that works. That's how I see it. So the more basic systems you get, the better off you are, versus, you know, the more basic, rather than going, you know, very, very deep. Okay. I also want to mention something. I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. When you read astrology books, they always, you know, like in my books, I always talk about the planet in the house, then if it's exalted, then if it's fallen. So everybody takes exaltation to be the most important thing and fallen to be the most important thing. It's not. It gets precedence because you keep writing about it. But if you have an exalted planet that is conjunct a malefic tightly, it's not going to act exalted. And if you have a fallen planet that is tightly aspected by a benefic, it's not going to act like it's fallen. But you can't see that in the books, because you're not going to write every single time, oh, by the way, if. So, you know, be a little bit careful about that. And one final thing, the planets in the 8th house and the 12th house that everybody, they say how bad it is, and the books say how bad it is. What they are leaving out of those books is the obvious. The obvious is that if there are planets in the 8th house, you're going to be into astrology and metaphysics and psychic phenomenon, but they leave that out. It's understood. When they have planets in the 12th house, that means the person's going toward moksha, they're going toward enlightenment, but they leave that out. So people think planets in the 8th house and 12th house are terrible. And I get all these spiritual people. I have 4 planets in the 12th house, I'm doomed. No, you're working on enlightenment. I have 3 planets in the 8th house, I'm doomed. No, you're going to be studying astrology and metaphysical subjects. So these are basic things. I'm just saying them because I hear them over and over and over again. And I've talked about this, by the way, in my book. I want to mention this. In this book, The Art and Practice of Ancient Hindu Astrology. I know I've mentioned that book before, but what I need to mention is that if people want the hard copy, it is out there now at Amazon.
Right.
People, because I keep getting emails, hey, when's that going to be in a hard copy? It's out, it's on Amazon, okay? Now, right. I want to talk about Uranus, okay? Right. So Uranus is fascinating. It is the planet of astrology. It was discovered around the time that electricity was discovered. So Uranus is a planet that is electric. It makes changes. It makes independence. It makes radical revolution, like that. So if Uranus is transiting a horoscope, when it hits the 1st house, that's when a person will have a 7-year transit where they are being very independent. Their personality becomes, I'm going to do what I want. I don't care about the rules and regulations, like that. When Uranus hits the 7th house, the marriage is never the same again. It doesn't necessarily cause divorce, but the marriage will go through changes because Uranus is change, okay? If a person is not having any relationships and Uranus goes in, it will energize the house. And they will start to meet people that are eccentric and new age and astrological. If Uranus hits the 10th house by transit, then the career is likely to change and the person is likely to function with independence and freedom. If Uranus goes into the 6th house, which is daily work, the person will feel restless in the workplace and they must have freedom and independence. If they are in the workplace and they have to answer to a boss, they will not like it. If they have to do routine, they need to get out of there because they need independence and freedom and creativity. So I want to talk about Uranus in relation to the planets. Okay?
Right.
Now, in the Western system, in the Hindu system, all we have is conjunctions and oppositions for
Right.
the most part.
Right.
In the Western system, the aspects, you have a conjunction, an opposition, but you also have the squares, 90 degrees. I won't talk about those or the trines because we're sticking, with people, just getting into it a little bit, okay? So the one thing to understand about the difference between, first of all, the conjunction is the most important aspect. It's the most important, it's the most fundamental. In Western astrology, it is understood when a planet is opposite, when a planet is in an opposition, the energy it throws is going to come from the other person,
Right.
because it's like the seventh house relationship, the opposition, the seventh house relationship, it's like me and the other, me and the other. Whenever you get any horoscope where there's two planets exactly opposite each other, those two planets, the person's going to feel like either I get what I want or they get what they want. If it's the sun Saturn, either I get what I want or my father gets what he wants. It's either or. So if you take Uranus and the sun is the Atmakaraka, or the planet of the soul. Now, when it comes to the Atmakaraka, I wrote this in my revised edition. When it comes to the Atmakaraka, I don't find it to be a good idea anymore. I did when I wrote the book. I used all the traditional things. I don't find using the planet in the latest degree as the Atmakaraka in the Parashara system. I don't like it, and I'll tell you why. The Atmakaraka being used in the latest degree comes from the Yogini system. Right. That's where it comes from. It comes from Yogini. The planet in the earliest degree in Yogini is the spouse. The person in the latest degree is me. It's the Atma, that's the soul. But people use that in Parashara to the extent where I'll be doing a horoscope and I'll be saying, look, your son, your soul, the Atmakaraka is in the house of children. They go, wait a minute, my Atmakaraka is Mercury. It's in the highest degree. They have, this is really interesting. They have forgotten the Atmakaraka in the system that they are using, which is Parashara, and they have adopted the Atmakaraka from another system. If you want to use both, that would be a little bit better than just using the one in the latest degree. But the reason I don't think it's such a good idea is because in the Yogini system, when you come to a dasha, say Libra or Scorpio or Cancer dasha, and the Atmakaraka, the planet in the latest degree, is there, that dasha is not very good. The Atmakaraka often causes problems. When you are doing the Parashara system and you're talking about the Atmakaraka, you're talking about the soul. The sun is in the ninth house. Your soul is connected to religion, philosophy. So that's just a little tangent. Remember, the Atmakaraka in Parashara is the sun. It's the soul. So if Uranus is conjunct the sun is the soul and the sun is the father. Okay? So it's a conjunction. The conjunction is neither positive nor negative. It only has to do with what the energies are. So Uranus next to the planet of the soul means that that person has no rules and regulations. They are beyond rules and regulations. They're going to do what they want to do. And they're going to be stubborn about it. They're going to be independent about it. They don't care what the world thinks and the rules, etc. And that's going to apply to the father as well. It means that the person's father could be independent. And when we say independent, that has a lot of different meanings. The father could be so independent as to be completely absent. Okay? The father could be alcoholic or strange or weird or genius, all these odd, eccentric features. But if it's the opposition, it's going to be more negative. because the opposition means it's coming from outside. So if the sun is opposite Uranus, then the person has the feeling that they're getting trouble from the father of the Uranian nature. So there's much more of a likelihood that the father is absent, that the father is, out of the
Abusive,
ordinary.
alcoholic, right?
Yes,
Dysfunctional.
exactly.
Dysfunctional would be the
If
word.
it Right. If the sun is conjunct Uranus, you don't know it. The father could be genius. The father could be, all sorts of things where it wouldn't be so negative. But if it's the opposition, it's going to be negative. It's going to be. And the one thing to remember about Uranus is it makes people defensive, makes them defensive, particularly if it's an opposition as opposed to conjunction. The reason it makes them defensive is kind of psychological. What happens is that because the person is so independent, they do what they want to do. They don't follow the rules and regulations. So imagine a child growing up for the first 7 or 8 years, and the parents are trying to tell the child what to do and what not to do, and the child says, "Get lost. I'm not going to do that." So when that happens, the parents double down and they become more intense, more intense. The
Exactly.
more intense you are on that person, the more they're going to get a psychology that is defensive. So now they go around in life and somebody says something to them and they take it the wrong way because they're so used to people trying to put them in a certain mold, trying to do what the other person wants to do. So they wind up defensive. And so you have to be careful about that. But the sun conjunct Uranus will be very, very good for people that are leaders, but revolutionary leaders, not traditional.
Right.
And it'll be very, very good for people that are astrologers, because astrology is ahead of the times. It'll be good for people that are in the airlines industry. They're flying, which is a new, relatively new. Flying is the last 100 years. It's relatively new. So that's the sun Uranus. It's very, very independent. It's very, genius and brilliant like that, but it does cause those sensitivities. If Uranus is with the moon, it's a very difficult feature. It's not an easy feature, because what it does is it makes the emotions radicalized. It means that on the emotional level, the person needs complete freedom. So anytime that person is with someone in a relationship or something like that, if they're in a relationship, it becomes very, very difficult, because they will start to feel trapped. They will start to feel smothered. So they need a lot of freedom. And the moon Uranus is going to do the same thing that Uranus sun did to the father, Uranus moon is going to do to the mother. So now if the moon is with Uranus, it means that the mother would have been unstable, or doesn't have to be unstable, but the mother could be so
Not be
busy
the
doing,
regular kind of mother that people
not
see.
a regular not a regular kind of mother, and the person cannot get enough stability and nurturing from the mother.
Right.
But the most difficult part of it is that person has trouble in relationships, because when people get too close, they run away, because they don't want to get, they need freedom at all costs.
Right.
And if it's Uranus opposite the mother, then it's opposite the moon, then it's going to be very, very difficult with females and mother both. But the person with the moon Uranus conjunct or opposite will be the most fascinating. They will be sexy, they will be fascinating, they'll be interesting, but you can't do much with them. They're going to do everything their way, and
So
like that.
sorry, that just way too commitment shy or phobic, as you said, about commitments.
Very phobic about commitment. You know what I tell my clients that have this aspect? I say, listen, you go to your spouse or you're the person you're in love with, and you tell them, I need you to say this to me every so often. I need you to say this to me every so often. Please, I love you, but please don't get too close to me. Now, if the spouse says to this person, don't smother me, don't get too close, we're in love, but don't, I don't want to be smothered, I need my freedom. If the spouse says, I need my freedom, the person with the aspect is going to go, oh, I could breathe. Now I could be with it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're
So
happy. So the relationship will continue on for a longer period of time, maybe probably a very long period of time.
if the spouse or if that person understands what's going on, they can work with it. What happens in these relationships is that the relationships get ruined because when they start to get close and the spouse wants to get really, really close, this person runs, right? So the person with the aspect runs away. So what happens to the person that just had that happen? They ran away. So now they get desperate. Now they get desperate and needy. And they say, I need you. I need you. And it
And
becomes
this
worse.
person will run away all the more.
All the
Yes.
more. So you do the opposite. Yeah. But, with Moon Uranus, that person the moon is the public. So that person can also be very fascinating to the public. The Moon Venus people are very, very fascinating, and they're very, very independent. And, it's a great aspect, but it's a little bit difficult in relationships mainly. And this also means that the childhood will not be stable. The moon is your nurturing in childhood. Okay. So the moon is whether, you can have a nice chart, everything is fine, but if the moon is in bad shape, the childhood is rarely very good. It's the nurturing. Uranus Mercury is a wonderful aspect for astrologers. It's a wonderful aspect for inventors. That's the person who is very, very psychic. Their mind is completely free. So you see a lot of people that have Mercury conjunct Uranus getting into astrology and metaphysical subjects and things like that, because their mind is not ruled by rules and regulations and what people tell them. Their moon is completely free. And those people have a problem in relationships because they speak too fast. Their mind is working faster than yours. And so
Right.
they blurt things out. They blurt things out, and so they need a little bit more patience. And not only that, but their mind is going to be completely independent and free. So when you tell them your ideas, they may not see it the same way, and they're likely to get into arguments a little bit more because the mind is so, different.
Busy.
Yeah.
Evolving.
And these people, the nervous system will be a little bit difficult here as well. They will be moving around a lot. They'll be busy, moving around a lot. So the thing is, if they try to meditate, it's going to be difficult because their mind is working so fast.
Right.
So if they're going to meditate, they have to do yoga and pranayama before they even attempt to
Meditation.
settle the mind. But many of those people will simply be better off by martial arts, by karate or tai chi or something like that, may be easier for them. With the opposition, you get people that are the most defensive. Pluto Uranus opposition and Mercury opposite Uranus, they will be defensive. They're constantly defending themselves. And you wonder, why are they defending themselves? I'm not accusing them of anything. But that's the same thing. The opposition works through other people. So
Right.
if they have the Mercury Uranus, then the parents were, manipulating their thinking or telling them what to think, and that becomes difficult. So But that aspect is very good for inventing and for knowledge and for psychic and all of that sort of stuff. It is more difficult in relationships in general. The Mercury, the Uranus moon, because of I can't,
Childhood.
you can't get too close. The Uranus Mercury, they take things the wrong way. They just take things the wrong way. My first astrology teacher, I was in class, and I asked more questions than most.
Most.
And I'll never forget this. He said, Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions causes earthquakes. And I said, why? He said, you ask too many questions. And I always think of that Mercury, he had the Mercury opposite Uranus, and he would take things the wrong way. The Uranus Mars is really good for martial arts. It's really good for mechanical, technical skills and things like that. But this can be a very difficult aspect. Remember, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they're all considered malefics. They give some of the greatest qualities possible. They make astrologers and inventors, but they also are by nature malefic. Mars is assertiveness. I'm going to do what I want to do. And Uranus is independence. And I always tell the story. I always have to tell the story. It's the perfect explanation for a Mars-Uranus person. So I met this German guy in Switzerland. He came to America. He was representing a car company that sold a car boat. It was a car. It looked like a big SUV, looked like a big car, but it also was a boat. So we were driving along the road. We see a little, waterway. So we pull off the road and we go into the water. And all the cars think that they stop. And they think, oh my God. And we just float away in the boat. He turns on the boat engine and we go away. About a half hour later, we get to an island. And it's an island where the Navy has a little base, okay? And on this little island, there's about 150 signs that say, Army base, Navy base, do not approach this base. Stay away. Don't even think about it. He says, oh, let's go over there. I said, no, we can't go over there. You see all the signs? He says, no, let's go over there. He had Mars, Uranus. Mars is, I'm going to do what I want to do. And Uranus is complete independence. And we went on the island. So Mars Uranus person is not just independent, but they are stubbornly independent, and they are going to do what they want to do, and it will get them into trouble sometimes.
Exactly. I just wanted to ask you what happened, and I realized this is a story. So
nothing happened. They said, wow, that's a really fascinating car boat. And I was sweating. I'm thinking we're going to be in jail.
Okay.
But that's the perfect story. There was nothing I could say. With the moon Uranus, the sun Uranus, they will listen to reason. Mars Uranus is not going to listen to reason. They're going to do what they want to do. They will not. It's just, I want to do what I want to do, and that's it. But it is good for mechanical, technical skills. Now, if Mars is opposite Uranus, you can easily get criminal behavior. I'm not saying they're all criminals, but it becomes, well, I mean, what my friend did was criminal. He broke the law by doing that. That was just a conjunction. But if you have the opposition, you have to worry a little bit more about accidents, mishaps and accidents. And you have to worry about, criminal behavior just because there's no boundaries. So it's, that's a bit of a rough aspect. But I mean, don't think that they're all like that. I get plenty of clients that have those aspects, but if I'm going to tell them about meditation, I'm going to tell them you need to go do Tai Chi or martial art.
Exactly.
They're going to have a very hard time with that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Uranus Venus is a wonderful aspect for artists. Uranus conjunct Venus. Now, if Uranus is conjunct Venus, then there's no rules and regulations to the love experiences. They can be bisexual. or gay or straight, but there's not a lot of rules and regulations. There's independence and there's freedom. These people are very exciting to be in a relationship. There's a lot of excitement, but they can be single. They can be single for a long time or forever. There's not any real desire with Venus Uranus to be in a close bond. There's more like, I want excitement. And if they do get married, it's best that they not marry before the late 20s, because if the excitement goes out of if they don't choose a partner who is essentially an exciting person, that marriage doesn't have much chance. They may be in love at first, it may be fine, but then when things calm down and settle down and the pheromones go away, if that person isn't interesting and fascinating, it becomes very difficult for the Venus Uranus person to stay with them like that. If Venus is opposite Uranus, then you have a very strong case of divorce, almost no matter what, if the aspect is tight. If the aspect is tight. And most of what I'm telling you, I'm using 7-8 degrees. I'm not using beyond that because I'm coming from the Western point of view with that.
No, very many old Eastern astrologers, as I see it, James, they have also, especially those following the KP Paddhati, they definitely have a very strong, view about aspects. Anything beyond 10 degrees, they do not take it very, very seriously.
Well, I use it. I mean, in Hindu, in Jyotish, I will use, if the ascendant is 3 degrees and Jupiter is 25 degrees, it's aspecting the ascendant. I will use that, but not in an extreme way. But here's when it becomes important. If you have 2 malefics aspecting a house, I don't care what the degrees are, that house is in trouble. Exactly. Doesn't have to be 8 degrees.
Yes.
That's how I learned. See, when I came back from India, neither of my teachers were using Rahu and Ketu aspects. And when I looked at Rahu aspecting a house, or Ketu, I couldn't really see anything. As time went on, I noticed that if there was a malefic aspecting a house or a planet, and Rahu or Ketu aspecting, the results were much worse. That's when I realized they throw aspects. Because if they were the second aspect, you would see a bigger impact. Anyway, so the Venus-Uranus aspect is very, very good for the arts. Now, in the Uranus opposite Venus, there is likely to be divorce, and it's likely to come through the other person.
Okay.
Because it's an opposition, it's likely to come through the other person. Right. And I'm going to tell you something interesting now. I'm a very practical astrologer. I really do not like people talking about stuff from past lives and getting real specific. I just don't like it because you could say whatever you want. Who's going to be able to prove it?
Exactly.
So I stay away from that stuff. However, I'm going to tell you very, very specifically. When a person has Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto opposite Venus, first of all, those are all malefics, and if they're tight aspects, the person's going to get divorced or they're going to be abused in some way. They're not going to have a good relationship.
Life, I said, a good, very good life, happy life. They would not have.
Well, no, I'm not talking about Venus being the life in general. I'm talking about Venus being love. They're going to have troubles in love with the other person. But here's the thing. You can have all kinds of love problems and you get a divorce and, it's not very happy and it's not very good. But when you see Venus tightly aspect Saturn, Venus tightly aspect Uranus, Venus tightly aspect Neptune, Venus tightly opposite Pluto, the problems that they have are severe. They are severe. And the person will have the strongest feeling that whatever that other person did to them was very specific. In other words, it's like the person that has the aspect, whatever that person did, they have the feeling like, I did that to them in a past life. It feels very, very extremely karmic, like I'm getting back exactly what I did to that person, they're giving it back to me. Whether it is like that or not, we can't say because we don't know past lives. But there's a different feel to it. People have divorces, and you say, yeah, we got divorced, we're still friends. Yeah, we got divorced, I forgot about it. But when it's in opposition, they never forget about it because they get beaten in a certain way so badly, they never forget it, and they have the feeling like they just paid back. They just
Deja
got
vu.
payback. Yeah,
Deja vu.
very
Deja
karmic.
vu. Right.
Very, very, very karmic. But it's good for the arts, good for creativity, and it makes the person very, very. It's kind of like It's kind of like Moon Uranus, very exciting people. Venus Uranus is very, very similar to that. But you
Okay.
can't pin them down. They need independence, etc.
So do you tell them
Uranus.
also? Do you tell them also how to ask their spouse to tell them, please don't?
Uh, no, they don't have that. They don't have the problem. They need the Venus Uranus person needs excitement. They don't have the same. They don't have the same problem as the Moon Uranus. The Moon Uranus, it's just you cannot get too close. Do not smother me. Venus Uranus is different. They just need excitement. They don't need
They
as much
cannot do work on the mundane. They cannot be cooking all day or be in the kitchen. They need to go out, go shopping, or do things which are different every day. And that
yeah,
is with relation of their married life or their love life, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Uranus Jupiter.
Hmm.
Uranus Jupiter is going to be a person that has they don't want any traditional ritual and religion. Their religion is all about fairness. It's all about being fair. Okay,
Hmm.
religion to them means justice, means you don't be unfair. That's what religion is.
You
The
can't be dishonest to people. You cannot lie
no,
to people. All those things are
no,
not acceptable by the
right,
Uranus-Jupiter combination.
right, right. And the Jupiter Uranus person, they will love philosophy. They will enjoy philosophy a lot. They will travel a lot. The Uranus Mercury person is traveling around the city every day, running errands and doing this. But the Jupiter Uranus, they want to be flying all over. They want to be visiting foreign countries. They want to be visiting gurus like that. And they have to be a little bit careful about getting into a courtroom with the lawyers and judges, because it will
Mhm.
be, if they may have a lawsuit which is completely on their side, they're in the right, but the judge could go either way. The judge, the Uranus has no rules and regulations, so they have to be, so they cannot just say, well, I know I'm in the right, so I'll go to court with this, because if the judge wakes up that day not in a good mood, it can go either way. If it's the Uranus opposition, you definitely want to avoid lawyers and judges and lawsuits and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, and the Uranus opposite Jupiter, they're going to have more troubles with
Government
uh,
agencies.
gurus and religion and things like that. But it's a very good aspect for astrology, metaphysical subjects, and it's very, very good for travel. But if you have any opposition with Uranus, any planet, there's going to be a defensiveness, and that's going to be with Jupiter Uranus as well. And
Hmm.
the Jupiter Uranus, if it's an opposition, the person's judgment will be troubled. Their judgment may not be may not be very good.
Right. So because as you just said that opposition is mostly negative.
It's going to be, yeah, it's going to be coming from it's very karmic. Oppositions come from the other person.
Okay.
So if there's any kind of Uranus opposition, as soon as the person begins talking to you, you can hear the defensiveness. You didn't accuse them of anything. You just said something. They took it the wrong way and they start defending themselves.
Hmm.
It's definitely more difficult. Any opposition is more difficult. Anyone. I mean, if you have benefics like Moon opposite Jupiter, Moon opposite Venus, Jupiter opposite Venus, those are not going to be difficult or negative. But anyone that involves a malefic, they will definitely be more difficult.
Hmm.
But there would be a lot of travel, and but there could be difficulties with gurus and spiritual teachers and stuff like that. And with the Uranus opposite Jupiter, the person can do things in too exaggerated a way. It's too exaggerated. It's too big. It's not balanced. The judgment isn't right. It's something like that. Uranus Saturn. Uranus Saturn is complicated. If it's a conjunction, then you get a person who is struggling. One part of them wants conservative and traditional. One part of them wants to be living a life that is conservative and traditional and doing things normal. And one part of them wants to be completely independent and radical. And that's not so easy to live with. It's not so easy to live with. And whatever house that conjunction is in is probably not is going to be very hard to control.
Right.
Those are two malefics, and there's going to be whatever house that's in. They're going to have a story to tell about area. They're going to have a story to tell about what happened in that realm. You know, you see that and you say, what happened with the sibling? What happened with the mother? What happened? You know, there's going to be a story. The Saturn opposite Uranus, that's going to be more antisocial. It's going to be a little more antisocial, and they're probably going to have troubles with authority figures.
Right.
Saturn is authority figures and the establishment and things like that. That's another one of the aspects where it becomes easier to have criminal activity or something like that. But that and that one they're going to feel like something is happening to them. They're being put upon by somebody else. But really what it's going to do more than anything is it's going to cause psychological problems because the extreme, the person feels like either things are going to work out in a conservative way or they're going to work out in a radical way. It becomes difficult. That's more probably not an aspect that you see very often, but it is one that's going to cause a lot of stretching and pulling and things like that. If Uranus is with the North Node, Rahu, then you want to look for that person if they do anything that is Uranian, any kind of inventing something, anything with astrology, anything that is ahead of the times, they will succeed easily. It doesn't mean that they will go toward Uranus activities, but when they do go toward Uranus activities, it's very easy and very successful. So if I see a person that has the North Node with Uranus, I will try to guide them towards whatever they're doing, try to do it in a very inventive way. Try to do something that's never been done before. Go toward astrology, go toward airline flights, things like that.
And Ketu, and finally we have the Ketu and Uranus conjunction or
Yeah.
das.
I would just say that that's extremely psychic. My son has that. My son has that. In the Western horoscope, Ketu is the south node, and it tells you what you've done in past lives.
Hmm.
The north node tells you what you're supposed to do in this
In this
life.
life, yes.
Yeah. So my son has Uranus on the south node. First of all, he's very psychic. He's very psychic.
Hmm.
Second of all, he learned astrology so fast. He you know, I think I told this story before. He was 12 years old and he wanted some computer device, and I said, "Well, I'll get you that device. It's $200-300. This was 10 years ago." And I said, "But you have to give me 7 weekends, and an hour on Saturday, an hour on Sunday for 7 weeks, and you'll get your device." Of course, but he said, "But I have to have the device now." I said, "Okay." So I gave it to him. After the 7 weeks were up, I was tired of it. I don't want to spend my weekends teaching. And after that, every night when he'd go to bed, he'd start with the questions, the astrology questions. And he would start asking questions about Ashtaka Varga. I said, "What? Where are you getting Ashtaka Varga? I mean, it's not like I didn't mention it, but why are you asking about Navamsha, Dasamsha, Ashtaka Varga, these things that are more advanced?" Because it's from a past life. The south node is your past life stuff. So he obviously, had some experience of this in the past.
It's a beautiful way to, sum it up. And so we can gladly say, like father, like son, a very beautiful thing we learned today about Uranus and the planets. And so if you find them in your charts, do put them. And it's not that Uranus, Neptune, Pluto do not exist for us. They really do. It's just that our way of looking is somewhat different. We can expand our views, see if it really works in our charts, and then write in the comments. There's nothing wrong in experimenting. Thank you so much, James, and we'll see you again in the next episode.